because this is such real life, and it seems like they're still connected too, or like they're still friends, still that like it's a tightrope that she had to cross, because
Yeah. Because you don't want to also offend anybody either, right? So
because I'm not gonna lie, like started thinking about it, I'm like, well, if I ever get divorced, I'm like, he's not wrong, like
it's not wrong.
is like it's a good idea to do, right? Like 3 kids, divorced, or like, do I really want to go on the dating scene?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Are you fine?
Yeah.
You're fine then.
Well, and again, I think a part of him too, in the way they're shown in the film, is he's also like, I had a good relationship. That relationship's over. I don't really want, like you just said, like, I don't really want to go through that process again, but I still want to have sex. So how can I do that?
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of How Chris Spends His Weekends. We're talking movies, we're talking Paying for It, starring Dan Burney, Emily Lee, and it was directed by Sook-Yin Lee. Chris, I think I have feelings for someone else.
Cool, because I just had sex with a prostitute.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of How'd You Like That Movie? We're going to talk about the Canadian indie film Paying for It, written and directed by Sook-Yin Lee, based on the Paying for It graphic novel by Chester Brown. Scott, do you want to give us a bit of a summary of what this movie is about?
Sure. So it's pretty much about a relationship that, somewhat deteriorates sexually, but they're still friends. And Chester Brown decides he is done with romantic relationships and pursues an alternative lifestyle of just beginning to sleep with sex workers, where he discovers a new kind of intimacy.
Yeah, I would say that is very accurate. And this is true. Like, that's the thing. Like, this is a fictionalized version of Chester Brown's graphic novel that was talking about his life. Like, so yeah, there's a bit of creative license, but the person that he breaks up with in real life was Sook-Yin Lee, from like MuchMusic VJ, an artist and performer and actor. Like, so these
and
are
director of this movie.
And director of this. Well, that's what I mean. And writer and director of this movie. She also worked with Joanne Sarazan, who also worked on Backspot and a couple other films. I just want to make sure she does get her writing credit as well. But yeah, basically Sook-Yin is telling a story about a graphic novel that is about her former partner and best friend and their life, which I'm like, holy fuck. Like this, you're already wading into some like dangerous ground when you're starting to talk about your own life. But especially when your own life is, my partner and I told my partner I was in love with other people and I wanted to open up a relationship. They were cool with it. And then what they did is decide to just start paying for sex. Like the quote I used to like, I just had sex with a prostitute. Like, he is super happy in that scene when he comes in. He's just like, guess what I just did? The one thing, so first off, I found this a very endearing film. It's obviously very indie vibe. There's no budget yet. It's got distribution. I don't even know if it's playing anywhere. It played at TIFF. This is going to be like your standard indie darling. It's definitely got that vibe to it. But one of the things that I found really impressive as far as her as a director is it would have been very easy to make her character the like kind of protagonist of this film. And I would say it's equally shared. Also, it lays out that like, and again, there's going to be some basic spoilers, but like, you would think that like she opens up her relationship and then everything's great, but it's not. Like, it's like, trouble, like finding someone who's decent, trouble finding this type of intimacy. So like, she actually has the most amount of obstacles. For the most part, Chester is just like trying to find out what flavor of sex worker he wants to work with. And then he does eventually end up in a basically like a monogamous relationship with a sex worker that is played by we were just actually talking about it, Andrea
Yeah.
Warhan, who is the personality behind the Modern Horror Book. There's a short film, and then there's Sean Baker is going to be making that into a feature film, and she's also advised on Honora, which is the most recent Sean Baker film. So sorry, I kind of just like went on a bit of a rant there. So
Well, that's the thing. Once you talk about hookers and sex, Chris is off. He's like, I don't. My God. He's like, finally something I
double
know
feature
about.
this and the movie Blow.
But yeah, like to kind of go back to what you're saying about, like it would have been easier to make, the Sunny character like the protagonist. Like I started thinking after I finished watching this movie. The one thing I was thinking was like how hard the production process must have been for Sook-Yin, because you're technically watching yourself in a mirror every day, every choice, like bring it back, even though these things happened like 30 years ago, you're now bringing them back to life and technically reliving it over and over again, because you're reliving it on the script page, you're reliving it when it's processed, and then you're reliving it again when you're editing the film. And that, I'm assuming that must have been hard because, like we said, it wasn't all like, whipped cream and cherries. Like there's some things that looked like they were very hard and traumatizing.
Well, and again, I agree with everything you're saying as well. Like you're also trying to you're the director, right? So you're trying to let Emily Lee, who's the actor playing Sunny, be an actor, and like what does she see in this character? But the character is you in your life. Like like the actor might be like, I think she's being kind of a bitch here and I want to play it that way, and it's like, but I didn't think of myself as a bitch in that scenario, you know what I mean? Like yeah, I think it's a very interesting way to approach this kind of subject matter. But then I also think that the advantage she has is it is her story, so she's allowed to be as gritty about the details as well, right? And it's not, she doesn't have to go to any other than Chester like she does, but like when it comes to her character, like she does not have to go and talk to someone else and be like, this is how I want to show this character. She's like, this is me, and this is how I'm going to show this character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you like it as a film? Like,
yeah, it was like, I've never read the graphic novel, but yeah, like it was engaging, and it like told a story that you haven't really seen much of. Like I think the closest would be Soderbergh's Girlfriend Experience, right? Where that'd be kind of the closest thing. And like the thing that I thought was interesting, even though Chester Brown's pretty much of two worlds, where he likes having sex and he wants to avoid being in a relationship again because it did hurt him breaking up with Sunny. He just didn't want to admit it because he's such a agreeable person. In the end, even like while you're going through this journey, technically he was always trying to find a monogamous relationship, right? Because he was always dealing with the same sex worker until broke up, kind of thing, until something happened.
yeah, and he ends up getting to have the exact relationship he wants because he pays for it, right? Like he even like, so by the end, again, spoiler alert, but like as we've already discussed, he has a monogamous relationship with Andrea Warren's character, where he goes on dates with her, like normal dates. They go to art galleries, they do stuff like that, and he still continues to pay her. She doesn't see any other clients, not because he imposes that on her. She just decides that she's doing, because she has other things going on in her life, so she reduces her client list. And then and they never really disclose if they're still doing this to this day. But
Yeah,
like,
they are.
oh, are they still doing? Okay.
They said there's a little like box at the end that they went there. I think it was like for 20, yeah, for Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Okay,
saying
so
for like 25 years they did it together, just the two of them. And then they were saying something that there was a law built in that he could no longer pay for sex, but they still saw each other and he paid her like
Yeah, that
still.
was yeah, and that has to do with the conservative government at the time, and I don't know where that stands now with our current liberal government. But yeah, anyway, I think it's a fun independent film. Like I was saying, I think it's super sweet, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I think it's just a cool little like love story that is complicated and funny, like very, very funny at times. It does take a bit of time to get into. And I think I was thinking about this before getting ready for the show, is that often we talk, and by we, I mean, it's usually me. I'm like, the way you write a script is you do this in the first 10 minutes and like the blah, 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 the inciting incident and stuff. Where I guess the inciting incident is technically that opening line where she's like, I think I'm in love with someone else. One could argue, but really, you're just watching a story unfold in the way that it's happening. And so you just got to kind of be in the story. And an example of this is sometimes when you watch like early, like 1930s, 1940s films, like they don't really have an inciting incident. They just are telling a story. Story starts, story finishes. And that's how this film is as well. It's like story starts and story finishes. And there is an arc and stuff like that. But because it's based on like real people and their real lives, it's not as contrived as like a script that's totally fiction. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I agree with you. Like I think, and that was the kind of the thing that we were saying before, like because this is such real life, and it seems like they're still connected too, or like they're still friends, still that like it's a tightrope that she had to cross, because
Yeah. Because you don't want to also offend anybody either, right? So
because I'm not gonna lie, like started thinking about it, I'm like, well, if I ever get divorced, I'm like, he's not wrong, like
he's not
that
wrong.
is like it's a good idea to do, right? Like 3 kids, divorced, or like, do I really want to go on the dating scene?
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Are you fine?
Yeah.
You're fine then.
Well, and again, I think a part of him too, in the way they're shown in the film, is he's also like, I had a good relationship. That relationship's over. I don't really want, like you just said, like I don't really want to go through that process again, but I still want to have sex. So how can I do that? And his friends are basically like joking with him, and then he just does it. He just like methodically works through it. And I think that's the other thing that's really great about this film is it shows sex work as just like a job, like they're just they're regular people, just like any other job. It's not condescending of the work. It's not degrading of the work. There's some conversations that the two characters have, both Chester and Sonny, about like, because she asked him at one point, like, well, maybe she's being trafficked. He's like, if she was being trafficked, like I would tell somebody, you know what I mean? He's like, I'm a good person. I'm not being bad here.
Yeah, and then she's like, well, did you ask her? He goes, well, she doesn't speak English.
That's right. Yeah, like I said, it's a really funny film. Again, I'm not sure how to see this film yet. Outside of like, so like I said, it's done its festival run. It played at TIFF. If you do get a chance, when we do know for sure like where it's being distributed, we'll do our best to let you guys know. Because I do think it's a fun movie to watch. It's a great story. It's definitely a conversation starter. Like you can go watch this and come out of that film and then have conversations with your friends. It's beautifully shot by Gayle Yee, who's a great Canadian cinematographer. The whole thing's very, very Canadian. And I think, like, man, I think Sook-Yin Lee, who, if you're of a certain age, you remember her from MuchMusic as a VJ. But like she was in a movie called Short Bus, which anybody who's into like film is aware of. That this is like but it's a film that's like highly sexual, and it has a bunch of real sex in it. What's the term? There's a specific term they use for that. Unsimulated, including Sook-Yin. Like she has real sex in this movie called Short Bus. Like this woman has like been in like indie scene in Canada musically, like what you would call like a purebred just like artist. So I'm really happy that she got to make this film. It's a very personal film. It has to be a very personal film. And if you get a chance to watch it, like definitely watch it. I think it's a great film. Like there's no flaws in it. Like, I don't know. Is there anything you would change or?
I wouldn't change, but there is something that like watching it and us talking about it again, like the last worker, the one that he ended up just being in a monogamous relationship with, it just seemed from the beginning that she wanted to be in a relationship with her, because their whole whole outview is she was always forgetting the money. Like she never wanted to take the money, right? Like I think, and it seems to me like that. It's like, it seems like she always kind of like it was always the test, right? Like, can we just do this without getting paid? Can we just like kind of be in a relationship kind of thing?
Because and she knows who Chester Brown is. So Chester Brown is like he's a famous Canadian satirical. I don't even know if it's always satirical, but definitely graphic artist. He did a book on Louis Riel, and he's like kind of like an alternative famous person from Toronto. And she's like, I know who you are. Like, so it's not that she was like starstruck, but like they had a lot of things that they were kind of interested in. Like they go to, like I said, they go to an art gallery together and they have their comments on like how the art is. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a really sweet movie. And I think that everybody should definitely watch it, especially if you're interested in independent film or talking about kind of like alternative lifestyle arrangements. It's great. Like the acting is great. It's got a great soundtrack. It's got kind of like, again, like this indie Canadian punk rock soundtrack. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, one of the favorite parts I had of this is because this movie gets intercut a lot with like the fake MuchMusic.
What is it, like more music or something like that?
More music, yeah. And then they'd be playing songs kind of thing, right? And in my head, I'm like, okay, so this one would have been like NSYNC. I'm like,
yes, there's a whole boy band thing. Yeah.
And then I'm like, and then there's like the rock band, the guy with the mohawk. I'm like, oh, is this Rancid? Like, who was this? Because like
that was
song.
Gob. That was Gob. That's a real Canadian punk band.
But in the thing, it wasn't called Gob.
Yes, it was. Yes, yes, it was.
Okay.
Because I thought they were all made up bands, and then I saw Gob, and then I realized what she probably did is she just called people she knows, like friends of hers who are in the Canadian indie scene, and were like, "Can I use your music video? Can I use to keep the budget down?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's the one that was like the New York one, and I'm like, is that supposed to be like Jewel or something? But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this movie as well. I do think people should watch it. And you know, you're going to be entertained, and it is, if it is something that, you know, nowadays, if you're thinking about going into a polygamous relationship, this does give kind of the ups and downs of what may occur. And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com.
So after watching this film and doing like just a bit of background on Chester Brown, it makes me now want to like go read his graphic novels, including the one on Louis Riel, who was like very famous Métis, kind of like revolutionary, or definitely like, you know, someone who fought against the government and then was hung for it. And who doesn't like reading graphic novels and like paying for it? I kind of want to go read Paying for It now.
Well, I'm sure, especially now with this out, I'm sure you can find it everywhere. Like, especially like...
or it will once this gets a wider release, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think now, like on the Indigo website, it says now a major, like the cover page says now a major motion picture. So they're obviously releasing it.
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.